All right. Hi, guys. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel, for those of you who don't know me. And today I'm going to introduce myself as an American living in Spain. And the reason I'm introducing myself with this description today is because I'm going to share with y'all 10 culture shocks that I've had upon moving to Spain. And the list that I have here today are things that I immediately noticed or I experienced within a few months of living here, because that is to say, I'm constantly going deeper into the culture and experiencing different layers and exploring different nooks and crannies of the country. So these are the first main ones that I had. And I'm going to start off this video by saying there's a lot of people who have made this video. I'm making mine today because we all have different cultural backgrounds and different mindsets and things when we travel or we go to a different culture. America is a huge country. All of us have different upbringings, which again affect our current experiences. So, I'm going to share a little bit about my upbringing and my mindset before coming to Spain, and that is going to explain why some of these things that I'm going to share with you today were very shocking for me personally. I grew up in North Carolina, which is a state in the southeastern US, and it's an interesting place because it's the South, but it's not the deep South. So it has some of that Southern heritage and culture. But I grew up in Raleigh, which is a big city, and there's a lot more cultural diversity. However, the South is typically a very religious and conservative region, and that has influenced my upbringing in a lot of ways. Then I grew up in a multicultural home. My family comes from a lot of different places, and my both of my parents have lived and traveled all over the world. So our house is filled with decorations and objects and stories from different places. So I already kind of grew up exposed to different cultures. Also, my family's not from the South. So I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a military household. So within my home, there were a lot of conservative and modest ideas that have affected my way of viewing the world. When we interact with a different culture, if we're open-minded, maybe things will be less shocking because we're just kind of letting it enter. We're just observing without judging. Maybe sometimes if we have cultural interactions without really being self-aware of our backgrounds or being open-minded to what's being presented to us, maybe there's more conflict and clashing there. I studied cultural anthropology for a while, and it's still something I'm really interested in. And that's why I'm making this video also, because I love learning about different cultures. And I came here wanting to experience something very different and unique. So I guess I came here with a little bit of an open mind already to certain cultural practices. However, we are conditioned to some extent based on our home life or upbringing, our religion, whatever it is. So even though I think I have an open mind when it comes to certain things, there were still some things where I had a physical reaction because that is just how my body and my DNA is programmed. I've had to remind myself to keep an open mind about certain things and remind myself to be curious about experiencing another culture, because there are times when I've been resistant or very uncomfortable when I've witnessed or observed or experienced cultural nuance or cultural difference. So, enough with the introduction, just get right into it. So, the first culture shock that I had when I came to Spain was something I saw right when I landed. I got on a train. I was heading from the airport to the city that I live in, and on the train there was a young woman in front of me. She wasn't Spanish, but she was definitely European, and she had an infant with her. And she just pulled the titty out and started breastfeeding, like whole full titty. And I'm like, we're like this, like I'm right in front of her. And that made me very uncomfortable because in the US, women don't publicly breastfeed. I think where I'm from, women are expected to go in a different room or have some sort of blanket that fully covers them. But something I immediately noticed here is that the titties are out. The titties are free when it comes to breastfeeding. So that was something I immediately saw on the train. And then I think I was just noticing it a lot. I don't notice it anymore now, but I was walking down the street one time and there was a woman just walking and breastfeeding her what looked to be like a 5-year-old child just dangling, honestly, while she was walking down the street, titty out. And I'm all for it. I'm all for that. Like that's something that I'm happy to see, that, women don't have to censor their bodies, and motherhood is seen as something normal and acceptable as it should be. But it was uncomfortable because it was just like, oh my God, her titties out. Like, I don't want to look, but I'm also curious because, like, oh my God, there's like, I've never seen something like this before. But yeah, I think you see a lot more breastfeeding is just a breastfeeding in public is the first thing where I was like, yeah, I'm not used to that in the US. With that being said, also I think cleavage and just showing your breastises in general is a little bit more culturally acceptable here. In the US, I think it is too, but where I grew up and how I grew up, I think modesty was what is like pushed on us. Anyways, number two is something I experienced pretty early on, probably in my first week, and that is throwing trash and sunflower seeds on the ground. Here, there's people have an addiction to eating sunflower seeds. It's almost like an oral fixation, and they're usually served at bars and restaurants. And this is something, the throwing the trash and the sunflower seeds, this is all within the context of eating at a restaurant or at being at a bar and being maybe outside on the patio. So that, yeah, you get sunflower seeds with your drink and you just eat those while you're drinking. People throw the shells on the ground, and I was really shocked by that. I'm like, that is, you don't put it on a plate or something, like you're littering. And people also just throw napkins on the ground at some bars, and I was like really shocked by that. It's like, people litter here, but actually no. Where I live and most cities in Spain are very clean because they have cleaning people. They have people who come and clean every day. They have street cleaners that clean every night. They wash the streets with water and everything. So while maybe people, I've have seen people just maybe throw cigarettes and napkins or pipa or the sunflower seeds on the ground, things are actually really well maintained and things are quite clean here. So people can get away with that. I still feel weird about throwing stuff on the ground just because not everything gets picked up at the end of the day. But yeah, I was really shocked by throwing the sunflower seeds just straight on the ground. I don't really have much else to say about that. Things are very clean here though. So that's the positive side to this, is that things do get picked up. Number 3 is personal space. People in Spain, in these Mediterranean cultures, I guess. I don't know. Well, I'm not going to generalize. I'm just going to talk about Spain. People stand a lot closer to you. There's less of that personal space bubble that I think we have in the US, where I think we keep like arm's length distance with someone that we maybe don't know as well. But in Spain, people have less personal space because, first of all, I'll talk about this in the next point, but they have the custom of the dos besos, kissing to greet each other, but that's not with everyone. That's usually with someone that you're being formally introduced to, or a friend, an acquaintance, someone you already know and have some confidence with. Otherwise, you maybe just shake hands. But in general, when I'm having conversations with my coworkers, for example, they tend to stand a lot closer to me. Or if I'm talking to someone that I know, or just having a conversation in general, people will tend to maybe put a hand on you, and not just like leave a hand on you, but like touch you as a way of connecting and maybe agreeing with what you're saying, or laughing. But in the US, I think people are way more self conscious of touching someone. I mean, obviously, if you know someone, you can touch them, but it's not really something like not a habit of mine. It's something that doesn't come out of me naturally to just laugh and put a hand on someone. Maybe that is something someone in the US, or I would do in the US more intentionally, maybe as a way of flirting, but it would be something very conscious. or maybe would have a more intimate context. However, in Spain, people hug and kiss and hold hands a lot more. My girl students will sit and just hold hands or touch each other's hair. And so there's definitely way more physical contact between people here. And at first, that made me uncomfortable. I have never really been a person that likes to hug, that likes to be touched, and that's something that I've had to consciously accept and be open to here. And now I'm trying to kind of also let go a little bit, and maybe if I get feel like it, like, oh, I can touch someone, or if I want to say goodbye, like I'll grab someone's hand to do so if it's someone that I have that trust with. But yeah, I did not grow up in a touchy feely home or environment, so that was very, like, for example, a male coworker, would put can might put his hand on my arm just while we're talking, and there's no hidden meaning behind it. It's just normal here. So if you're coming to Spain, if you're gonna ever live in Spain, that I think is something that's important to know before coming here. And then the next one I mentioned in the last point is the two kisses, dos besos. So when you are being introduced to someone, or you're greeting a friend, an acquaintance, maybe even a coworker that you get along with, you greet each other by kissing on the cheek. But it's just like a touch and then mwah, mwah. Like I personally don't kiss on the cheek, but some people do. Some people give big kisses, strong kisses. It depends on every individual's style, but people kiss. And this is cute with friends and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's really cute and classy, very diva between, the girls. But for me, when it gets uncomfortable is when it's with older men. I have had to give two kisses to the husbands of coworkers and adults in my life, and that is very strange for me. Even though it means nothing, it's just right. You don't, that's so close. That's being so close to someone's face. I have never been that close to an old man's face before. But with that being said, it's that's been uncomfortable, and sometimes I don't kiss people. Sometimes I just choose not to. I just stare and I'm like, because I'm not in the mood always. I have to really feel open and ready, kind of hype myself up to give the two kisses. And I'm very awkward when it comes to doing that. I have almost kissed a 74-year-old man on the mouth. I had this little old man friend for a little bit over the summer, very innocent. And one time we were saying goodbye, and I went, I think, in the wrong direction, or it was just bad timing. And I almost kissed this man on the mouth. And that is not the only time that that has happened to me. And it is disturbing and awkward. You just have to kind of laugh it off because, I mean, right, like that's the risk if you're getting that close to someone's face. But ooh, I need practice with this one. But like I said, there's been times where I'm being introduced to someone and I choose, it's rude. It's definitely rude not to kiss, but I there's sometimes where I just can't. But I'm getting better at it, and I'm trying to practice more. But it's, again, not something that comes out of me naturally. I have to force myself to do it. Like when I see friends, I'm like, oh, but it is, I am forcing it. It's not, no. And speaking of hugging and touching and kissing, this is number 5. We're on number 5 already. Is PDA, public display of affection, in Spain is way more acceptable. In this US, it depends. Like, again, in the South, it's a little bit more modest, a little bit more conservative. If people kissed, like made out in public, it called a lot of attention. It was very llamativo, as people say here, like very calling, like you notice it. And if you are touching your partner's butt, maybe you're rubbing on them, it's like, get a room, like go home, get a room. Kind of, I think that's the typical reaction to that kind of thing. And PDA here, I would say it's more common amongst younger people. It's very common to see two young kids in love, making out or kissing on a park bench because, they probably can't be home doing that kind of thing. So it's much more common to see kids, young lovers, kissing and that kind of thing in public, but I see a lot of older partners kiss, not like passionately make out, but put a hand on the butt, smack a butt, squeeze a butt, very subtly, but that is something that is way more common and not. I don't think anyone cares. I notice it again. I see it. I was very uncomfortable. And this is a very personal one for me, the PDA, because my boyfriend is Spanish. And this was a huge conflict for me when we first met and started dating because he wanted to kiss me a lot. My boyfriend is we kiss each other a lot. We love kissing each other. But he was very open to doing that with me in public in front of a lot of people, and it made me very uncomfortable. And I think it made him think that I didn't like him. It made him think that I was maybe very serious, but that's just not something we do in the US. I don't know. Let me know if you guys just are comfortable kissing and that kind of thing in public. And also, he want to squeeze my booty sometimes, and I'm like, people are around us, but no one cares. Like no one really notices because it's normal. That's not everyone's style. Again, not everyone's doing this. There's some people in Spain who might think that is a little too much. However, in my case, I'm with a southern Spaniard. He's very passionate, very cariñoso, loving, and that was really hard for me to get used to, is that kind of display of affection everywhere. And now I'm used to it. I think we're a little bit on an extreme level when it comes to kissing and stuff in public. But I've gotten used to it. But at first, I was very uncomfortable. But I don't mind now. Like I'm in love, I'm happy, and there's no reason I need to hide that. Obviously, we reserve certain things for private for when we're alone, but in general, I'm fine now with kissing and hugging and being very close in public. But I'm curious because my boyfriend and I are going to be in the U.S. together soon, and I'm curious how our interactions with each other will change or adapt when we're in the States. I've warned him a little bit about the PDA thing, but honestly, I don't really care anymore. So we'll see. I'll have to check back in with y'all on that one. Number 6 is sharing food, and this is something I've kind of didn't really become aware of until recently. But sharing food is much more common here than in the States. I went to dinner with a group of friends a couple weeks ago, and what's very typical here for birthdays and parties and special occasions is to get the menu, like order lots of plates that are just put all in the middle of the table, and people grab what they want from that plate, but we're all eating the same food. It's not as intimate as some cultures where you're literally eating maybe with your hand or bread or something directly just from one shared plate. In this case, we have our small plates and we grab what we want. In the US, I think it's much more typical that we order our individual meal. Everyone picks what they want because I think maybe I wonder if that has to do with our more individualistic culture where we have very unique preferences, tastes, and we're used to kind of getting what we want over there. So I think at first I was like, I want to eat what I want to eat. And I made a TikTok about this video. So I'll put my TikTok below where I talk a little bit more into depth on sharing food. Not much else to say about that. I think you can go to my TikTok and watch my video where I said it the way I wanted to say it. But number 7 is a really silly one. But this is one thing that I had to get used to was that sometimes light switches are on the outside of a room, not, I think in the US, they're directly next to the door. And yes, in Spain, I have light switches directly next to the door. But most bathrooms, the light switches are on the outside or more closer to the mirror, for example. And I get in a room and it's dark and I'm like, where is the light switch? And I can't find it, but it's on the outside of the room. I don't know why that is. Should have looked that up before doing this video. But yeah, light switches tend to be on the outside. I don't know why. I guess to make sure that you aren't searching for a light switch in a very dark room because typically there aren't windows in a bathroom. So it makes sense, but it's not where my mind goes when I look for a light switch. Number 8 is tardiness and punctuality. So it is a stereotype that Spaniards show up late to everything. In my experience, I've never seen that. I'm usually the one that's late. However, I've never been to like a house party or something like that. Actually, yes, I went to one birthday party and I was the last one to show up. And I was only like 20, 30 minutes late, which is not that late in my opinion. However, when it comes to punctuality, it's not as strict and it's not practiced like it is in the US, where I remember growing up, I played sports also. And again, that military mindset that I grew up with, where you show up early to things. That's being on time, is showing up early. I always showed up early to class in university, like 10 minutes. I had time to like prepare my things or just decompress. To soccer practice, you always show up early, kick a ball around. Birthday parties and things, you show up on time, not early, but you show up typically on time. But in Spain, I think, for example, for work, people show up when work starts. People don't show up early. My coworkers made fun of me, joke very, very, very innocently. They joked about, oh, the American always showing up early, because I just feel more prepared when I show up early and I can breathe and get my stuff ready versus starting when it's supposed to start. And I'm more relax about tardiness and punctuality and things like that now. I tend to show up when just when I'm supposed to be there, not before or after, just right on time. Maybe a minute or two after, but I don't feel guilty or anxious anymore if I'm late to something a few minutes. And then if I'm going to be a lot later, just give a heads up and everything's all good. It's not the end of the world. But I used to be way more anxious about showing up on time to things. But when it comes to things like doctor's appointments and important dates, meetings, things like that, it is important to show up on time. But if you go to the doctors in Spain, do not expect to be seen at the time of your appointment, but you should show up on time. Number 9 and 10 are kind of similar. This is about just routines and orders of operation in the day. So, number 9 is that, let me just say first that I don't live in a big city. I don't live in Madrid or Barcelona or Sevilla or anything like that. So things work a little differently where I live. It's a little bit more familial, communal here. So during the hours of 3 to 5 p.m., most things are closed in my experience where I live. And no one's on the street. I feel like me and the other foreigners are on the street from those times. Like everyone's in their house because that is the time to eat. La comida, that's the most important meal of the day. So if people do have the privilege to have time off of work within that window, they go home and eat with their family typically. However, I'm alone here, so I do whatever during that time. But the stores and things close. But number 9 is not about the stores and things closing. I will talk more about that in the next point. But number 9 is that when siesta, la comida ends at 5, when everything reopens, everyone is out on the street. I feel like people just go out and run errands and go shopping. The la merienda, which is after like 5, between 5 and like dinner time, people have a coffee or eat a pastry or just a little snack. And after 5, there is a lot of energy in the town. People are out and about, which was overwhelming for me at first because the city center every day, there's a lot of people. But there's just always people on the street in the evening. And I like that there's a lot of energy now. And it's fun to go out and merendar and like have something to drink and people watch and things like that. But I think at first I wasn't used to that because in America you're in your car, so you drive everywhere, you're alone. There's not as much energy in life on a daily basis just out in the street. Like everyone leaves their house, which I do like. Things are a little bit slower here, and it's a smaller town, so it's really easy to meet with friends. Versus if you live in a city like Madrid, living in Madrid is a similar experience as many Americans have, where you live very far from your friends. You have to plan in advance. It's not easy to just casually meet on a Tuesday, but here you walk 15 minutes and not even, that's pretty far if you walk 15, 20 minutes to meet with a friend, but that's nothing. Like it's so easy to socialize here. And where I live, people are very social every day, which has given me a lot of FOMO because, I'm on my own here most of the time. I've made a few friends, but I'm still building a community here. and it's not very common. That's another culture shock. I'll throw that in. Number 9. It's not very common to see people doing things by themselves. And I feel like it's kind of not looked down upon, but a little bit weird when someone my age is alone doing things. Most people go out to eat or go to a movie or do whatever it is with people. People do not go out to eat alone because, again, with the sharing food, going out to eat is not made for individuals, it's made to share. And then number 10, the last one, is arguably the most boring. I started off very strong with the breastfeeding one, and it was kind of tapering off. Number 10 is just the orders of operation here. Like I said, everything closes from 2 to like 5 p.m. For example, the store, like the general stores where I can get things like paint and art supplies, school supplies, things like that, those close during the time when I'm not working. So I have to really plan my day or plan accordingly to do shopping. However, Mercadona, the big supermarket here, is open all day, which is convenient for me. So, yeah, it's good for me to have some stores that are open, but most things close pretty early. The supermarkets close around 9 p.m. I think the latest things stay open is 9:30. But it's nice for people who work to go home at a reasonable hour. Things are closed on Sunday, but you can still go out to eat and things like that. But the hours are a little bit different. Banks are open from like 9 or 8 or 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Thursday. So if you need to go to a bank, it has to be then. So good luck. And going out to eat, restaurants, they have, I think, like you can maybe have lunch in a restaurant, it closes for a few hours, and then a restaurant will open back up for dinner time. They don't stay open very long for dinner time. Like they open late at like 8 p.m. is when dinner starts. But if you're going out with friends, you eat, you talk, like I don't really know what turnover is like for restaurants in Spain, because every time I've gone out to eat at a restaurant, we get there right usually when it opens, and then we're there, and then they close at midnight. Spaniards talk a lot, so dinners last a very long time. Prepare like at least 3 or 4 hours to have lunch or dinner because of sobremesa, which is just talking. And there's so many courses. There's your appetizer, your first plate, your second plate, dessert, coffee, a chupito, a little shot. It's like what are those called? Like licor after or something like that. That is to say, it's different going out in groups than just individually. With when you're with a group, when I'm with a group of people, I feel more like, okay, I have to do what the group does. But if I'm just meeting with one friend, I can be like, oh, I only have time for one drink, or I can be a little bit more transparent about my schedule. Well, that was everything. I hope I talked about everything I wanted to talk about. I hope this was interesting for you guys. Let me know in the comments what would probably be the weirdest thing. I don't like to use the word weird when it comes to culture, but the most different for you. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. It means a lot to me. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like and a comment. I would greatly appreciate it. And I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.